Bonjour tout le monde, welcome back to We in France. I'm Diane and I moved to France in 2012. And you know what they say about hindsight being 2020? Well, if I were moving to France today, here's what I'd do differently now. Alright, so you know that whole you live, you learn thing? I believe every choice I've made has led me to where I am now. So truth be told, I do not regret any of the decisions I've made and what I'm talking about here. You know, we try in life, we make mistakes, and then hopefully we grow from those mistakes, you know, and we learn. And everyone knows we can't go back in time, but you know what? When we know better, we do better. So if you're looking to move abroad to France or somewhere else, maybe some of what I talk about in this video can better prepare you. And before we get started, thank you so much to Fab French Insurance for sponsoring this video. For all your visa insurance and any type of France insurance needs, I'd love for you to check them out via the link in the description box below. Okay, number one, the first thing is focus on language comprehension and actually speaking the moment that I knew I'd be moving to France. Not grammar, not writing and reading, but actual speaking and listening practice. Because I think classroom learning is great, but a lot of time is spent on other things, grammar and writing, and there's not always enough real life speaking practice. And know what? When we're soon to be face to face with actual French people, preparing ourselves ahead of time by practicing actual speaking and comprehension is so important, and it's something I majorly underestimated before moving. I totally flubbed that. You know, I was taking French lessons back at the Alliance Française, but you know, I didn't put enough time into actual speaking. And you know, we don't know what we don't know. So yeah, I got up to speed, but it took a while before I truly felt confident. And for so long, the French words just sounded like a jumble of sounds. And I'd understand the first half of the sentence and not the second. Or I'd understand the end, but not the beginning, telling me the who or the what. You know, so spoken French is nothing like classroom learning. And I actually made a whole video on why comprehension needs to be our focus if we're actually moving to France. So check that out where I explain this in more depth. And don't get me wrong, grammar and reading and writing and all of that, they're so important. But when you move to France, your biggest skill is going to be learning to understand people and to make yourself understood for actual conversations. And I feel that should be the top priority. Had I done that, I wouldn't have been in that sticky situation for about a year where I was so frustrated. And you know, these days, French shows and movies and podcasts are so easy to find. They weren't as, you know, prevalent 10 years ago. So do all that stuff, learn to speak with actual French people, and put your focus on that. Okay, number two, I would have worked harder at making connections and networking with people already in France so that when I arrived, I would have had people to talk to and a built-in network. You know, but I didn't do that. And I feel when we first move abroad, especially in a small town, it can be really isolating. And if I had made it a priority to seek out other foreigners, people who had just moved, or even, you know, French people looking to have that cultural exchange, I think I would have set myself up a little better and it would have made my first 6 months here a bit less lonely. And you know, these days there are so many Facebook groups and networking sites, and it's a bit easier today. So if you are moving abroad and you want to have a bit of a social life, take those steps ahead of time. Okay, number three, relied less on my husband to do the important phone calls and talking. And if you've ever moved abroad, you didn't speak the language that well, you can relate to this one, I'm sure. You know, you're nervous to begin with, and then you start making mistakes and not understanding, and you kind of panic, and then your nerves make you mess up even more, you know, even on the easy stuff, the stuff that you know. And I've totally been there. You know, I remember calling a bank once and not really understanding much, but I was so proud to get to that last question I wanted to ask. I had it written down. I was eager for the answer. So, you know, I asked my question, and then I heard the woman tell me, madam, were you listening? I just explained that. And I'm like, oh gosh. You know, and that's cute when you're an 18-year-old student, but as a fully functional adult, that whole language learning process can be a major hit to your ego, you know? And people understood me just fine, but it was so hard for so long for me to understand them, you know? And anyway, that point kind of ties into the first one I mentioned about focusing on comprehension, because if I had felt more comfortable talking to people, especially on the phone, and had more practice with that, maybe I wouldn't have had to rely on Tom as much, and it would have served me well over time. You know, I should have just muddled through some of the calls that I asked him to make, but you know, I didn't want to miss important details either when you're calling a doctor's secretary or when you're making an appointment that that's an hour drive away, so I wanted to make sure the information was correct. So of course I had reasons for wanting Tom to do the hard conversations, but I feel like in the beginning there maybe could have been a happy medium where I could have tried a little harder and kind of gotten over that hump a little more quickly. But yeah, it was overwhelming. I let Tom handle it. That was the easiest thing, and it's all worked out, but I definitely would have become more comfortable sooner if I had just done it myself. Okay, number 4, not letting our default language at home become English. And Rosie of Not Even French, she did a really thoughtful video on this recently, and I relate to all of her reasons about why she speaks English at home with her French husband. So definitely watch that if you want more insight into this, or you're saying, what? That's so weird. It's actually not that strange, and there are reasons why. One of the big reasons for me personally is Tom's level of English will always be better than my level of French. And because of that, early on in the relationship, I had no confidence in French and he had confidence in English. So we got into the habit of speaking to each other in English more than half the time. And that's how we got to know each other. And then it became that default language that we communicated in. Now, if we had spoken French at home, at least some of the time, I'm sure I would have gotten up to speed on some of those other things I mentioned a bit more quickly and felt more confident speaking to people during my first year here, just being honest. But I feel like I only know Tom in English, and it's weird to me when he speaks French. I think of him as my husband who speaks English with an accent and not a French guy, if that makes sense to anyone out there. When I hear him speaking French to colleagues or whatnot, it's almost kind of funny, and I laugh because to me, he's just the guy who has an accent, But when you establish a relationship in one language and you get to know the person in that language, it is so hard to break your habits. And I feel like, of course, we can still work on this. We've tried, and maybe there's still hope to speak French some of the time at home. But for more insight into this, watch Rosie's video because she says it all perfectly. All right, number 5, not joining the gym right away. Now, fitness has been a part of my life since college, but when I moved to France, I quickly learned that my small town gym did not have the same facilities I was used to back in New York City. The only gym I could walk to here in town had old equipment, like no classes. It was not motivating, so I put it off, For over a year, I worked out alone at home, before apps like Peloton, which I love, became available, or I worked out at local parks instead of spending the money on a gym membership. And, eventually my solitary routine got a bit boring, and I did join my local gym, and it was the best decision I could have made, really. Anyone I consider an acquaintance in France or a friend is someone I met through my gym. So from that social aspect alone, joining a gym was worth it. And my advice to you, whether you're into fitness or whatever it is that you love, if there's an activity you enjoy, definitely seek out that club or association right away after you move. Even start looking into it before you move. Whether it's for a hobby or any activity you're interested in, don't delay because it'll pay off in terms of socialization. Okay, I want to know from you below what things you would have done differently. Hindsight, like I said, is 2020. If you were moving abroad now, if anything stood out to you here, I'd love to hear about that below. And if you like this video, as always, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content like this. I'd really appreciate that. And again, thank you to Fab French Insurance for sponsoring this video. Whether you need a compliant insurance policy for your visa, car insurance, or a mutuelle, don't stress because Fabien and his team, they can help you out and in perfect English. So you'll get the best deal. Check them out via the link below. And yeah, that's all I have for you today, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you back on We in France soon. Salut!